Senior Surgeon Drisa Onrek was 81 years old when she finally told it, and she told it the way her teacher would have told it, if her teacher had ever sat down to tell it, which she never did. Her teacher's name was Surgeon Captain Idona Veer, and Surgeon Captain Veer had not softened anything. Drisa had been 19 the morning they walked into the tent at Stillwater after the rout, and she had already learned to keep her hands steady. She had not yet learned what it cost her teacher to keep her face the way she kept it. The rout had finished in the dark. By the time the runners came up the river road and woke the field hospital, it was already past the first hour. The Royal Cavalry of Veshin, 3 squadrons, 140 sworn riders of the King's Iron Vigil, had been ordered into the gap between the 2 ridges at Stillwater Cut. The ridge had not been theirs. The order had been a misreading. There were 32 riders standing afterward. Of those, 12 were standing only because someone else had put them in a saddle and slapped a horse. The light came up gray. The runners brought lanterns, and the lanterns brought the wagons, and the wagons brought what was left of the squadrons in long, uneven rows on straw. Vere was at the tent flap before the first wagon had stopped, sleeves rolled to the elbow, hair already pinned, a clean linen apron over her surgeon's coat, a clean lamp in her left hand. "Drisa," she said without turning, "fetch the senior orderlies, all of them. Tell them I want every cot up by the 2nd hour. Tell them I want the iron stove lit at the back. Tell them I want the ledger on the writing table beside me open." "The ledger, Captain." "The ledger. Names go in as they come down off the wagons. Not after, as." Drisa went and fetched the orderlies. When she came back, her teacher was already inside, kneeling beside the first cot, lifting a cloak from a face Drisa had passed in the corridor the week before and would not pass again. Vere wrote his name herself. She did not let the orderly do it. She wrote it in her own narrow, firm hand at the top of the first column. Then she stood up and went to the next cot. By the 4th hour the rows were full, the back tent had been opened, and the chapel barn behind the hospital had been emptied of hay and laid with straw for the ones they could not keep inside. By the 6th hour the stove was warm and the bandages were boiling. By the 8th hour Captain Veer had not eaten, had not sat, had not raised her voice once, and had set 58 bones, dressed 71 wounds, cauterized 9, and pronounced 34 men dead. Drisa wrote the 34 names under hers. Her hand shook the first time. Her teacher put her thumb on the top of Drisa's wrist, light as a moth, and held it there until the shaking stopped. "Steady," she said. "These boys do not need a clerk who is sorry. They need a clerk who is exact." At the 12th hour the staff officer came. His name was Major Adjutant Halrick. He was not a bad man. He had been on the ridge that should have held. He had been the one who carried the misread order down to the squadrons. He had not slept either. He came into the tent with his cap under his arm and his hair flat against his skull from the rain, and a folded leaf of paper in his hand, and he stopped just inside the flap when he saw the rows. He stood there a long time. Veer did not look up from the cot she was working over. She finished a stitch, knotted it, cut the thread, laid the curved needle in the bowl of spirits, and only then stood. "Major Adjutant." "Surgeon Captain," he inclined his head. "I have been asked to bring you the list as the staff would have it carried up to the capital, for the families, so that we do not lose time." "Bring it." He came down the center aisle between the cots. He held the paper out to her with both hands. She took it. She read it. She read it twice. Then she said very quietly, so that only he and Drisa and the man on the cot beside them could hear, "Major Adjutant, the boy on this cot did not die of his wounds. He died because the cavalry was ordered into a gap that the ridge was supposed to hold, and the ridge was not held. Your paper says he died with honor in a contested engagement. That is not what happened." Halrick did not move. His face did not change. He said, "Captain, the families." "The families will be told the truth, Major Adjutant. The truth is also honorable. It is what is owed them. The staff did not stitch him. I did." There was a long silence in the tent. The men on the cots who were awake had heard. One of them, a corporal named Tev, whom Veer had set back together at the 4th hour, turned his head toward them. He did not speak. He only watched. Halrick lowered his hands. "Captain, you are being asked to certify the list. You are not being asked to write it. I am being asked to put my name beneath a sentence I do not believe. That is what certification is. Captain, bring me the names. Each one. I will write the cause beside each one. I will sign each line. I will sign every line. But I will not sign a paragraph at the top that turns a misreading into a battle. The families of these men will read what is in front of them for the rest of their lives. They will read it to grandchildren who are not yet born. They will not read a lie out loud in their kitchens for 40 years because we were tired this morning. Helrich's mouth opened and shut. He looked down at the paper. He looked at the cot beside him. The Corporal Tev, who was watching, did not look away. I cannot bring this back to the staff, Captain. Then do not bring it back. Leave it. I will write the new one myself, and I will send it up under my own seal, and the staff may rebuke me at their leisure. You will be dismissed. Possibly. You will lose your commission. Possibly. Captain, you have served 15 years in this hospital. You have set more bones than any surgeon in the kingdom. You have— Yes, Major Adjutant, I have. That is precisely why my name on a softened list would harden it into a fact. That is the cost of what I have built. I will not spend it on a paragraph. Halrich stood with the paper in his hand and his cap under his arm and the reins still on his shoulders, and he did not know, for a long quiet moment, what kind of man he was about to be. Then he set the paper down on the writing table beside the ledger. He set his cap down beside the paper. He took 2 steps back from both. He looked at her. Surgeon Captain Vere, Major Adjutant. If you write the list as you have said, I will carry it. I will carry it myself to the capital. I will hand it to the Chamberlain in front of witnesses. I will say, when asked, that the cavalry was ordered into a gap the ridge was supposed to hold, and the ridge was not held, and that the order was mine to carry down, and that the misreading was the staff's. I will say it under my own name. She looked at him a long time. In all the years that came after, Teresa would never see her teacher look at any other man the way she looked at Major Adjutant Halrich in that moment. It was not gratitude. It was not relief. It was something quieter and older, the look one disciplined soul gives another, when each has just learned the other will not run. Then stay, she said, until I have finished. It will be after dark. There is a chair by the stove. You will eat. You will sleep an hour. When the list is ready, you will carry it. Captain. He did as she told him. He sat by the stove. The orderly brought him broth. He ate it. He did not sleep, but he closed his eyes for a quiet half-hour while she worked, and that was nearly the same thing. What was on the table between hours 12 and 22 need not be told. There were no graphic things she did that she did not do every other day of her working life. The difference of that day was only that there were more cots, and the wagons kept coming, and twice she had to step outside the tent for a count of 10 before she came back in. And she came back in, and the orderlies who had been with her 10 years did not look at her face when she returned, because they understood her dignity was the only thing in the tent that was not breakable. At the 20th hour, a young rider was carried in, whose name was Anik Veer. He was 19, he was her nephew. She had set his arm when he was 11. She had taught him to clean a wound when he was 14. She had argued with her brother for a long, bitter winter when the boy chose the cavalry against her counsel. He had ridden into the gap with the 2nd Squadron. He had not come out of it. The wagon had brought him 3 hours after the others, because they had not found him on the first sweep of the field. She knelt beside the cot. She lifted the cloak from his face. She put her hand on his hair the way she had put it there when he was 11 and frightened of the needle. She closed his eyes. She did not weep. She stood up. She walked to the back of the tent. She stood there with her back to the room for the time it takes to say the cavalry oath through 3 times. Then she walked back. She wrote his name in her own hand. She wrote the cause beside it in her own hand. She wrote, died of a wound to the chest, received in a charge, ordered into a gap the ridge had not held. She signed it. The Corporal Tev, who had been watching all day from his cot, turned his face to the canvas wall and wept for her, since she would not weep for herself. It was past the 22nd hour when she finished. The lamps in the tent had burned low. The orderlies were asleep on the floor between the cots, the way orderlies sleep when they have stopped pretending it is anything else. Teresa was at the writing table with the fresh fair copy in front of her, the names in her hand for the first hour and in her teacher's for every hour after. Vere came and stood behind her. She read every line. She read every cause. She read every name. She took the pen. At the foot of the list she wrote, in the same narrow firm hand, a paragraph of her own. These men were ordered into a gap that the ridge was supposed to hold, and the ridge was not held. The misreading was not theirs. The riding was. They rode as they were sworn to ride. I have set their bones and dressed their wounds for 15 years. I have never been prouder of any squadron in this kingdom than I am of these 3 this morning. Surgeon Captain Idona Veer, Kingsfield Hospital at Stillwater. She signed it. She sealed it. She passed it to Major Adjutant Halrich at the stove. Halrich took it. He did not look at it. He looked at her. Captain, Major Adjutant. I will carry it. I know. He went out into the dark. He did not put his cap back on until he was past the tent flap, which was the courtesy of a careful man. She turned to her apprentice. For the first time that day her face moved. It was a small movement, only at the corner of the mouth, and it was gone in an instant. Drisa. Captain, eat something. There is bread on the back board. Sit down for 1/4 of an hour. Then come back, and we will go through the wards together. Drisa ate the bread. She sat down. She did not weep either, because her teacher did not. And at 19 the only ceremony she understood was to do what her teacher did. Vere was not dismissed. Major Adjutant Halrick carried the list to the capital and stood in front of the chamberlain and said what he had said he would say. He was reduced in rank for it, and posted to a quiet garrison on the eastern shore, and lived there for the remaining 11 years of his life, in a small clean house with a garden, and he and Vere wrote to each other twice a year, plain letters about the weather and the small news of their work, until he died. The staff at the capital tried, for a time, to bury the list under a softer paragraph. They did not succeed. The families of the cavalry of the King's Iron Vigil read their sons' causes in Vere's hand, with her paragraph at the foot, and they did not read a lie in their kitchens for 40 years. 3 of the mothers came down to the hospital in the years afterward, and asked to meet her. She received each of them in the small back room beside the stove. She poured them tea. She did not say a great deal. She did not need to. The kingdom changed its standing order about how casualty lists were to be written. It is a small change. It is 1 line in the field manual still in use today. It says, "The surgeon of record will certify each cause individually, in his or her own hand, beneath his or her own seal, and no general paragraph shall stand at the head of the list." The line is not credited to her. Most things she did were not credited to her. She would have refused the credit anyway. She would have said the line was Halrick's, because he was the one who carried it. She lived another 23 years after Stillwater. She trained 9 surgeons. Drisa was her first. She set, by the count, in her last ledger, 11,040 bones, dressed 19,000 and some odd wounds, pronounced 2,211 men and women dead, including her nephew, and wrote every cause in her own hand under her own seal. She is buried in the small chapel yard behind the field hospital at Stillwater, beside the cavalry stone. The cavalry stone has the names of all 108 men who did not come back from the cut, in the order she set them down on the list, in her hand cut into the granite. There is no paragraph at the head of the stone. There is, at the foot, in smaller letters, her own paragraph from the list, word for word. Drisa Anrek was 81 years old when she finally told it, the senior surgeon of the King's Field Hospital at Stillwater, and in her own ledger she had written every cause in her own hand beneath her own seal. Her teacher used to say only once or twice, and only late, and only to her that honor was not a thing one carried in the chest into a fight. Honor was what one did with the list afterward. Honor was the cause written beside each name in one's own hand, when tired, when grieving, when a man had asked for the list to be softened for everyone's sake. Honor, Vere had said, was the truth set down exactly, by the person who was there, in their own hand, for the families. That was the story of the list at Stillwater. That was what Surgeon Captain Idona Vere did between the 12th hour and the 22nd of the morning after the rout. That was why, when the families of the cavalry of the King's Iron Vigil read their sons' causes, they read the truth. The paragraph at the foot of the stone was the only thing Vere ever wrote that was about herself, and she did not put her name to it, and she did not know, when she wrote it, that it would be the one carved at the foot of the stone. She would have hated that. She would have asked them to leave it off. They did not. It was the only argument Drisa ever won with her, and she won it after her teacher was dead, which was the only way she could have won it at all.